Hey everyone, it's John, and I'm back with a Geek and Dorks review, and this one is a bit of a Netflix gem. I think my wife actually got me into this originally, and she watched the whole series without me. Then there was a US version of this series made, and she watched that, and then we went back and we watched the original English series together. This is about Broadchurch, and once again, I'm trying to find content that I think Brain Scratch fans will appreciate. This definitely fits into that mold. The quick plot outline here on imdb.com is: the murder of a young boy in a small coastal town brings a media frenzy which threatens to tear the community apart. And one of the things I love most particularly about season one, outside of the amazing cinematography, like seriously, the first season in terms of cinematography, it rivals anything that you see in terms of major film. I mean, the director of photography, just his eye for picking clever shots in the first season is literally brilliant. Now, there is a second season of this, and I can say, I don't know if they changed the director of photography, but it's not nearly as clever in terms of the shot selection. The first season in particular is a visual treat. But outside of that, the plot of this murder mystery and how it unravels is really, really well told. You have a few very strong actors, in particular David Tennant, who some of you might know as one of the famous Doctor Who's, and Olivia Colman, who honestly I don't think I had seen in anything before this, and I just absolutely fell in love with her performance and her portrayal of Detective Ellie Miller. There's just something about her performance that resonates so strongly with that character that you believe that she just is that character. That's just the way it is. And there's an easy way to see the juxtaposition in this, because we actually made a US version of this show called GracePoint. And GracePoint, at least the first episode, is almost a shot-for-shot remake of the first episode of Broadchurch. However, from there, as the season goes on, the script really starts to deviate. If I remember correctly, the murderer in the case it's completely different from Broadchurch to GracePoint. But the biggest thing that I was let down in GracePoint was Anna Gunn, who actually plays the role of, I don't know if they still name her Ellie Miller, but essentially she's the female detective. They used the same actor, so you have your Doctor Who, David Tennant, coming from the English version, where he has a really strong accent. As a matter of fact, if you have trouble with the accents in this show, I highly suggest you turn on the closed captioning for the first couple of episodes till you get acclimated to it, because he's got some really hard R's rolling, and it's a little tough to catch all of it. But his character, D.I. Hardy, is just an amazing treat of a character. He's like the detective that we all wish that detectives were. You know, the guy that just doesn't want to let go. He's got a bit of a broken past, but he's coming and trying to reboot himself here in this small coastal town, and now he has this murder to deal with and all the fallout while the community is literally crumbling around all these accusations and what's going on with the court case. But what's strange is in the US version, they had that female detective role played by Anna Gunn. And Anna Gunn actually received some big awards. She's got some Emmys for her portrayal of the wife in Breaking Bad. However, I got to tell you, her character work, at least specifically in terms of GracePoint, I was not a big fan of. There's something about that role that is very critical in terms of its believability to making this whole thing work. And for me, she just didn't quite bring it. And it is interesting to see David Tennant go from his thick Broadchurch accent to an American accent in GracePoint. And even his character has a little bit of a slight shift in when he kind of represents it in this American way. But the female lead character, for me personally, it was just almost like she just lost all of the believability and the richness and the deepness of the original character, and I think that really shook the show up. Also, it was strange because they used the same director from Broadchurch to GracePoint for a while, and then I think they peeled him off and they got some new writers later in the season. Ultimately, GracePoint was not renewed, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. But Broadchurch did come back with a second season. I literally just finished watching it this weekend so I could do this review for you guys. And I can say the second season is not quite as strong as the first, definitely in terms of cinematography. In terms of performance, it's all there. In terms of it being a murder mystery, it's a bit different because it actually kind of continues the story from the first season. And instead of showing you the detective process, it's now showing you the legal processes around that case. And in terms of drama, it's rock solid. It feels just like the first season. But in terms of the episode architecture, it's a little bit different. The second season feels just a tad bit slower, particularly in the first half. But then they kind of worked in this great storyline where with D.I. Hardy, he gets to go back into kind of that broken part of his life that I told you about earlier and gets to rectify that, which is really, really cool. There's some very good writing around all that. And one of the things I love absolutely most about this series, and I hope this continues, is they give you enough clues where you should be able to figure out some semblance of what the truth is in the story. However, when you get to the final details of them telling that whole story, you're always blindsided by some aspect of it. There's just something that you couldn't account for. And they don't do it in a way where you feel cheated, like, oh, well, but they didn't even tell us about that character. All of a sudden there's a new guy that walks in the door and shoots someone. It's not blatant like that at all. They give you reasonable scraps of information where you can go back and say, oh, now all that makes sense. Very, very clever writing. It's pretty rare, particularly because here in America, we have so many police procedurals and so many shows that are based on this investigative format that you can kind of see the end coming sometimes very quickly. Law and Order in particular, it's just almost mechanical and very easy to see where the plot's trying to lead you. This show does not fall into that at all. So I highly, highly recommend this show. It's one of my favorites. When I got to the last episode of season 2, I was already dying for more content. And unfortunately, they're pretty short. I think each season is only 8 episodes, if I recall correctly, maybe 10 at the most. But they are coming back for a 3rd season, although it hasn't started shooting yet. And then, of course, it needs to air in the UK before Netflix will pick it up. So it's going to be a while until we see the 3rd season. But that gives you plenty of time to check out Broadchurch, Season 1, Season 2, and even go ahead and watch GracePoint if you want to see another aspect of that Alec Hardy character, and maybe see what goes wrong in terms of American productions when we sometimes try to bring UK productions over and redo them and kind of blow it. Because honestly, for me, GracePoint was a pretty good example of what can go wrong when you move a show from one side of the pond to the other. So I'm sure for all my fans out in the UK, you already know about Broadchurch. You're probably sitting there nodding your head off. I totally agree. I love the show. I love the characters. I really, really love the relationship between Alec Hardy and Ellie Miller. Out here in the US, we kind of have our relationship, especially with the X-Files coming back now, the Mulder and Scully relationship. This Hardy and Miller relationship feels kind of similar in that. These are two people that work really well together, have a great sense of humor with each other. You can tell they love each other, though not romantically. But they have this kind of tough love for each other that really resonates through the show. And it's just a welcome relief to see some excellent character work. This show has won, 19 different awards. I think it's got Best Actor, Best Actress all over the place. It's just really a joy. So, and if you're a Netflix subscriber, you've already got it sitting there. It's just waiting for you to search on it, find it, and add it to your list. So I hope you've enjoyed this Geek and Dukes. That's a new one. That's the English side of Geek and Dorks. The Geek and Dukes. I hope you've enjoyed this Geek and Dorks review. Please be sure to drop a comment below. Let me know of any other shows or documentaries in particular. I'm really starting to dig mystery documentaries to review for you guys, and I will check those out. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you have a great week. See you again soon.